Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
I don't know if I can do 15 more weeks of sad Lions openings anymore. Like, I just don't think that's sustainable.
I have an alternative.
No. Look, there's actually, I think there's some YouTube commenters lately who are like, there was a bet you guys made a while back where you said if Brad talks about the Bills or something, he has to wear his pants on his head for a full episode. There's something that you promised you'd wear your pants on your head. And I keep forgetting to bring it up to you. And then the comments are just like, pants. Like, it's just one word, just pants, because you haven't worn your pants on your head yet. So just know the more you talk about the Bills, the more you rile that crowd up, because you owe them.
I have no recollection of making this, but if I get to talk about Josh Allen for the next hour and a half, I will put every pair of pants I own on my head.
My biggest shame in life is that one of the other podcast hosts has such a ugly, like, stained glass window fandom of other sports. Like, it's Detroit and then like Toronto, Buffalo. Ugh.
It's good for perspective because before this time, I somehow managed to be more miserable than the average Detroit sports fan, and it's turned around for me in some areas. So, for Detroit sports, maybe there's like not the Lions, definitely not the Lions.
But
it's
never the Lions.
But the Red Wings could be good in a couple of years. They have some prospects. The Tigers could be good in a couple of years. They have some prospects. Like, there's hope there. The Pistons are the Minnesota Wild of the NBA. So, you know, cautious optimism, but probably just going to be a fringe playoff team for a while. And then the Lions are there. So as long as football is not your favorite sport, there's reason to be. I meant they're there, like, physically in Detroit, not in terms of being good anytime soon.
I was going to say, are they even there? Like, are they even there physically?
It's hard to say, really, based on how easily the ball moves towards their end zone.
It was 14-3 today, and Mel walked in, and she goes, "Hey, your team's winning. And they're winning against a good team." And I looked at her, and I went, "Have you learned nothing? Have you learned nothing?" Well, she left. She came back, and I was like, "Hey, remember when it was 14-3? She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "It's 30-14 now." She's like, "Oh, well, you celebrate the successes while you have them." I was like, "Oh, God, not for this long."
Yeah, this is what I'm trying to do, Ryan, because this might be the only point in my entire life where I can say Josh Allen leads the NFL in passing yards.
Do you have friends who are Bills fans?
Many. Like, it's the one team I cheer for where, like, the majority of my friends fall in line.
Look, man. Evan, even though he doesn't care about football, and most of our listeners are sad Lions fans, so spare us, lest we die. And then if I die, you know it's just you and Evan every podcast. And are you willing to put up with that? Don't answer that, actually. Evan, how's your weekend?
It was a lot of golf, as you could expect, both physically and also physically sitting on my couch watching the U.S. Open.
How do you feel about Bryson?
He's the second worst person person I wanted to win, but he's not as big. The first worst
blew it, so it makes you feel better about it?
Yeah, when it was Patrick Reed and Bryson 1-2 after the second round, I was basically saying, I will take anyone. I will let John Daly could come out there and I'd be cheering for him.
Yeah, well, John Daly's just out there crushing beers and swinging, like taking tee shots out of his friends' mouths. So yeah, looks like that'd be fun.
I feel like I need to be clear here, though. If there's a field of 400 golfers, including Tiger Woods and Arnold Palmer and John Daly's in the 400, I'm cheering for John Daly. I want him hitting the teeing off beer cans. I want him shotgunning a Mickey before every putt, and I would very much like to see him go all 4 rounds, wire to wire.
It was a really cool tournament to watch. Like, it was like 5-inch deep rough. Like, the greens were insane. Like, I've never seen greens roll this way. And Bryson played the best. He deserved to win.
Well, thankfully for everyone, we do have hockey content to talk about this episode, so we are going to pivot back to that. So welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, promising you that we do talk about hockey on this show. I'm Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco, and I promise nothing.
And I'm Evan.
Evan also promises nothing, but that comes implicit in his contract as a podcast host. I've actually never heard or received a promise from Evan in any capacity in my entire more than half a decade of knowing him.
So when you get a promise, you know it's the real deal.
Yeah, well, I'll wait for that.
He's going to come over in a sketchy-looking truck, bang on your door, all ruffled with a shovel in hand, and then he'll be willing to make a promise.
Exactly.
When we decide on a time for the show, Brad's like 9. I'm like, yeah, 9's good for me. And Evan goes, yeah, 9 sounds like it's good for you guys.
Yeah,
we'll see if I'm there.
Pretty much.
On this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about the Stanley Cup Finals, or Stanley Cup Final, I guess. Some goings on around the league in terms of free agency, some relevant to Detroit, some not. Updates about Red Wings prospects and players playing abroad in Europe, some awful news, some great news, and then we are going to be doing this week's prospect profile. Or this episode's prospect profile. So first, the Dallas train has not stopped. 1-0 against the favorites, Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, they have home ice advantage, so yeah, they're the favorites. Air quotations.
Yeah. Do you think they just play the crowd noise a little bit louder when it's the Tampa Bay fans cheering?
No, the refs are just a little more biased.
Ah, okay.
Just that they get the Zebras just 20% more on their side. How many of us would have been sitting here and believed that the Dallas Stars would be up 1-0 in the Stanley Cup Final, and their goal scorers would be Joel Hanley, Jamie Alexiak, Yoel Kiviranta, and Jason Dickinson, if we told you this in January?
The usual suspects, just the guys you expect to turn up in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah. Yoel Kiviranta, who was a mediocre points producer in the Liga last year. I think he was like 0.6 something points per game. Jamie Alexiak, who has the offensive touch of Ryan, noted defenseman. Joel Hanley's first NHL goal, and Jason Dickinson's first goal of the playoffs. Just like we all expected. And this is all while being backstopped by a Russian beer leaguer who is only in here because I'm pretty sure he made some kind of blood pact with Jim Nill.
Rick Bowness deserves so much credit. It's a lot of Dan Bilesma in his first year coaching Pittsburgh vibes, because when he replaced Terrian, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then obviously went on. We know who they beat in 2009. We don't have to talk about that anymore. But that team is just coming through every single game. It doesn't matter if they're the more favorite team offensively or defensively, or how good Vasilevsky's playing, or how good whoever their opponent's playing. Like, they are just showing up as a team every single night. So much credit to that coach for being able to do it. This is the same team where the CEO called their two best players horseshit, or saying they were playing like horseshit or whatever it was, to now odds-on favorite to lift the cup.
And they lost their head coach midseason because of an incident that nobody will say publicly, so God knows what it is. And we're sitting here, 21 games into the Stars playoff run, and Tyler Seguin has 8 points?
Yeah.
It's not just that, the Stars aren't as improbable a cup winner as people are making them out to be, but the fact they're doing it with Tyler Seguin, their probably best offensive player, having 8 points as they're in the cup final, is probably the most improbable thing of this all. Yoel Kiviranta is... who's the comparison? I mean, the Oilers didn't win the cup in 2006, but remember when Fernando Pisani went God mode? This is what that feels like. It's like, how? Why? We know we're going to forget you next year, but we'll never forget you because of this. It's unbelievable.
I will never forget how Fernando Pisani just turned it on. Like, him and his he had the ginger beard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember looking him up after he started scoring all those goals, and I was like, this guy doesn't do this. This is not his game at all. But just turned into a playoff freak. Yeah, a lot of the same kind of feel there. It'll be a good series. I mean, I hope it just doesn't turn into like Tampa's frustrated by them and they can't get past them just like last year with Columbus. But I don't know. I still stand by the fact that this year's Tampa team seems different. I mean, they made it this far at least. So
without Stamkos.
Without Stamkos.
But this is what wins, though. Dallas is a very, very strong defensive team. And on one hand, you almost got to feel bad for Tampa because they're running into all the defensive stalwarts in these playoffs. They had to go through Columbus, one of the best defensive systems in the league. Islanders, probably the best defensive system in the league. The Stars, one of the best defensive systems in the league. Boston was probably the worst defensive team they played. Like, think about that. Tampa's just got to be sick of it. They're like, please just give us like, who would be a good offensive team that they could have played in the Cup Finals here? Because that's all they would have wanted. Please give us Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Please give us Vancouver.
Well, I don't know. Like, I think they probably would still have been asking for Dallas, right? Like, I don't know. You go into the Stanley Cup Finals asking for Vegas.
Oh, I'm just saying from a stylistic standpoint, Tampa does way better with run and gun hockey because they're loaded with talent. Tampa themselves are a good defensive team, but they have that skill set to do both very well, which is what other teams don't have. So when most teams employ the defensive shutdown strategy, which is the most prevalent in the NHL now to varying degrees of success, if they get a team that plays the opposite, they'll know how to exploit it because the other team won't be able to keep up with them. That's just the reality of it. And their defense will shine through because not everybody has a Victor Hedman or a Ryan McDonough on their team, and Tampa has both. So, I mean, it's been a worst case scenario playoffs for Tampa in terms of getting to the Cup Finals and in regards to who they've had to get through to get there. If it wasn't sad, it would be funny about how every year Tampa goes on a run, they do it with just like an injury that would absolutely paralyze other teams, because this isn't even the first time Stamkos has been hurt when they went on a deep cup run. Their starting goalie got injured when they made the finals. It's just they find new and creative ways to get injured to not win the Stanley Cup. They should have 3 by now in the last, 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and they're running into what feels like the team of destiny right now that just, again, Hanley, Alexiak, and Kiviranta were the 3 goal scorers before the empty net. Like, you can't make this up. There's, as much as we say, and myself specifically, this is a superstar-driven league, and it is. In situations like this, your depth can make a difference, and Dallas is. I mean, not to say that Hudobin's not playing like a superstar. Miro Heiskanen's definitely playing like a superstar. That's it. It's just winning by committee with the Stars at this point, because the rest of their superstars aren't really playing like superstars.
I would say Jamie Benn has been playing, I wouldn't say out of his mind, but I'd say he's very, very competent right now. He's almost got a point per game, and he plays a very hard physical style of game that wears other teams' top players down. I've liked his game a lot, and he's kind of been driving his line, but it's not at a level where like, oh my God, this guy's just out of this world right now. But I think he's been very adequate, given his sort of stardom level.
Yeah, he's been terrific, but he hasn't been a Nikita Kucherov or a Braden Point level of good in these playoffs, but he's been good. He's been
You don't
effective.
have to be when everybody's scoring.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing with Tampa. They're not getting that. When you look at their stat sheets, most nights, it's Hedman, it's Point, it's Kucherov, it's Palat's had a really good playoffs, but you're not seeing a ton from the Alex Killorns and the Tyler Johnsons and the Cedric Paquettes of their team. And in game 1, that was literally the difference. Yanni Gourde got
seeing a lot of from the Tyler Sagans either.
But this is exactly what happened in game 1. Tampa's big line got nothing. Their one goal came from Yanni Gourde, and it was a very fluky goal. And Dallas got nothing from their big guys. So the top sixes of both teams neutralized each other. It was Dallas's depth that won game 1. And Hudobin, obviously.
let's hope that either Tampa Bay wins and we get to obviously co-opt that win into some kind of Red Wings happiness and say that's the team Yzerman built. I don't care whether you say that's valid or not. Or Dallas wins and we get to hope that they fire John Cooper and Yzerman brings over John Cooper, and then we also find a way to extract Palat or Johnson or Paquette from them. Win-win here for Red Wings fans. You're happy no matter what.
Exactly.
Moving on to some free agent news around the league. But actually, first, we're doing this thing right now called a rum pot, where you just pour like some dark rum, like the worst dark rum you have because it doesn't matter, in like this ceramic pot with a bunch of fruit, and you leave it there from like literally like April until the holidays. And
This terrifies me.
Yeah, this is
It's
not
good.
sounding appetizing at all.
I've tried it before. It's really good. And obviously ours will be ready soon. But I just use that same dark rum just to make like a quick drink here. Oh, jeez. I poured way too much of this. I'm struggling. Anyways, I just wanted to share it with you guys.
Do you like swap the fruit out, or do you just let the fruit go bad?
It doesn't go bad. It's sitting in like high proof alcohol.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think.
Don't know how.
I don't know. I might be missing steps. Mel might be doing more stuff while I'm not looking. Anyhow, free agency news. Alex Pietrangelo
Is
has
not
been told-
coming to Detroit.
No, yeah. I think that goes without saying.
People in my timeline seem to think so.
He's been told by St. Louis to explore free agency. So if you want to know what a COVID cap world looks like, it means St. Louis telling their top end or their number one free agent priority to explore free agency, because they're up against the cap as well, I believe. So they're not exactly swimming in money. Well, $5 million. Yeah. They have some moves to make, and Pietrangelo is going to demand a high dollar value here. So,
Well, they have $5 million, but that's before they sign a bunch of RFAs, and most notably Vince Dunn, who's going to probably take up most of that $5 million himself.
Vince Dunn's the only RFA.
Is he? Well, he's
Up
going to
this
cost
year,
$3
yeah.
to $4 million. So
Yeah.
and from every report that's come out, it sounds like St. Louis and Pietrangelo are not even close. They're about $2 million away on AAV. There was some report that came out about St. Louis is like, here's our what we're willing to offer you. Please don't review it and sign it. Basically,
Yeah, that was funny. Don't look at the structure, just agree to it.
yeah. So I assume no signing bonuses, no trade protection, none of that stuff. Just here you go. Here's less money than you wanted, and we're going to control everything. And obviously a player of Pietrangelo's age and his stature, and he's got a family. He wants stability. He's probably angling hard for a no move or a no trade clause. And St. Louis is probably not about that. But then again, I don't think any team should be about that with a 30-year-old free agent. But yeah, and I am super curious, because what Pietrangelo's camp is looking at in all likelihood is Roman Josi, who signed last summer. I think Yossi's a touch younger, but very similar players, very similar production, captains of their teams. So from Pietrangelo's standpoint, absolutely a fair comparison. And Josi got over $9 million. I mean, I think everybody thought that was close to fair, maybe on the high side, but not anything crazy. But that was in a world that wasn't ending. When St. Louis says go explore free agency, I legitimately think they're making a calculated bet of him going and no team offering him dramatically more than St. Louis did.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, well, I don't want to leave St. Louis. So if I'm not getting better than $7.5 to $8 million anywhere else, might as well stay in St. Louis.
Yeah, Roman Josi, I think that deal probably pissed off a lot of GMs, but at the same time, that guy made $4 million forever as well, right? So even if you think that was coming in a little bit expensive, that's a guy who went and got paid. Alex Pietrangelo won a cup, is 30 years old. This is his last big contract. It's not like he was making pennies before, but he knows what he can get on the market. And even though COVID has destroyed the cap and destroyed players, I don't want to say destroyed, players whose salaries are coming up right now, it's ruined a lot of their potential earnings. A lot of them are going to fight against that. They're going to say, no, I'm a good enough free agent where you make it work for me. Pinch somewhere else. I'm not I'm not squandering $2 million a year just because of something that's completely out of my control. And whether or not you think that's fair, I mean, you can't blame Pietrangelo for operating that way. But like you said, who's going to do it? Pretty much the question is, how's Toronto going to find a way to pay Pietrangelo?
Right. And apparently they're rumored, but they would have to give up a lot just to be able to get him. And there's not even a trade there. But it's funny, too, because in a COVID world, this would be hard, even if St. Louis wanted to do it. But, I mean, St. Louis is a smart organization. They're probably looking and going, yeah, we're not paying a 30-year-old defenseman $9 million into his late 30s. Like, that is never a good idea, no matter how good that defenseman is. So I think, obviously, COVID's an excuse for them, but, hey, they got to do what they got to do.
Yeah, that Justin Falk contract is really coming back to bite them. That's $6.5 million for eternity.
Such a bad deal.
It's $3 million less, and I'm pretty sure Falk's younger.
28.
So he's not the player Alex Pietrangelo is, but that might end up being a better contract in today's world. Now, if Pietrangelo ends up settling at like 7.5 somewhere else, then yeah, it absolutely came back to bite St. Louis in the ass. But if Pietrangelo's firm on $9 million plus, They have at least a little bit of insurance there.
I don't really know how St. Louis could make this work. Like, they have to subtract a big contract and sign Vince Dunn to something reasonable. Like, they just don't have the space right now to make it work without a trade.
Maybe the Red Wings should try to get Robbie Fabry from them.
We can actually get Jacob Delarose, but that's only going to save them $700K. I don't know much about him, though.
You get that premier piece, and then you also have to take on a bad contract. Hey, all right, let's be wild here. Justin Falk. Did the Red Wings offer it? No.
It's a bajillion years.
I know. I just went over to Toronto's cap-friendly page because I just wanted to see how they could make this work. And I know, like, I'm one of the biggest preachers of if you're going to overpay your superstars, but it's just so jarring to see the top three salaries, 11.63, 11, and 10.893. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't know how St. Louis makes this work without making a trade. And if it sounds like they'll call his bluff. I don't know if you took on one of their contracts, you'd get a good piece because they've kind of made, I hate to say it again, but they've made peace with potentially losing Pietrangelo.
So do you think maybe they're playing such a hardball game with Pietrangelo here because they looked at what happened to Chicago and LA and went, let's not make those mistakes over again and pay the sweetheart contracts to the guys who got you the cup previously?
As teams should be doing.
Yeah, I mean, when free agency pops around, players aren't loyal, so teams should not feel obligated to be loyal. Nobody in this business should be obligated to be loyal. So if you're looking at it and going, hey, thanks for the cup, we'll always appreciate you for that. Go get your money somewhere else because we want to win another cup, and paying you $9 million a year will prevent us from doing that. Now, there's always the calculated risk. How big does St. Louis think their window is? If they think Pietrangelo could be truly, truly good for another, let's say, 4 years, which I'm skeptical of, but I could see, and they believe they could get 1 to 2 more cups in that window with him, and then they understand that the back half of that contract is going to be a disaster, but if you get 1 more cup out of it, it's absolutely worth it, then yeah, you take that swing. But given that St. Louis bowed out of the first round this year, I don't know how confident in that they're going to be. And most of their key players are not of an age where you think they're going to continue to improve. At this point, most of their roster outside of maybe Parayko and Dunn is of the age of, yeah, if they maintain, it's a win.
This is why when players take huge discounts, I'm always like, I'm not crying for millionaires, right? Like, I'm not worried that they won't be able to afford the home that they want. I'm talking about value in the market. When players take huge discounts early on, I'm just like, man, GMs are going to wise up because people like Doughty and Seabrook and Keith have burned those bridges for you. Like this can only happen so much under the current cap and salary structure, and GMs are going to get wise to it, as they should. If I'm a fan of the Red Wings, I'm offering this as a hypothetical, even though it's a retrospective into the Ken Holland UFA contracts. But if you're a fan of a team, you do not want your GM signing players who are past or exiting their prime money that should have been assigned to them before that. Because then when they're old, they're going to be worthless, and that money is going to be tied up when you should have been paying a younger version of them. But then you have Nathan McKinnon signed on for like 2 Happy Meals and a signed puck from Sidney Crosby. And it's just like, man, I get it. I get you want to build a team that wins, but not every team that wins the cup has like superstars on mega discounts, and it could burn you later. Like if you decide that, yeah, I've been underpaid and I want my deal, you never know what's going to happen. Anything from, the salary cap is low, the team that you want to sign with doesn't have any room, or a frickin' pandemic ruined the salary structure in the NHL. I get that this did end up going to crying for millionaires, but I promise that's not my point. I do have a lot of sympathy for them. We podcast with one. Evan is worth many billions of dollars. We can only assume.
Oh, yes.
Yes. If Evan became a millionaire, that would actually be a great financial hit for him.
That means Brad and I finally got sick of it and held him up at gunpoint.
How does one rob someone of stocks at gunpoint?
Give me your password and 2-step verification code.
Can you just transfer stocks to people? Is that a thing? Can you send them like an email that says, open this e-gift card and you get 10 Apple stocks?
I have no idea.
Can you just like sell your stocks and then transfer us the money? I feel like that'd be far easier, and we need it.
Yeah, just do that, Evan. That'd be like the slowest robbery in the world. This robbery is going to take 2 to 5 business days.
How does one make small talk during a robbery that's long? Or are you just comfortable with the awkward silence?
You go, like after like day one, we're like, all right, we're going to level with you. We trust you. If you want to go pee, we're not going to stand with you anymore. We trust you. Yeah. But can you please tell your cat to stop screaming at us?
I can't do that.
Other free agent news. There's more and more whispers that Edmonton is looking, and Ken Holland are looking to walk away from Andreas Athanasiou.
I know it will never happen because Yzerman wasn't a big fan of him, and Andreas wasn't exactly happy to leave. But if the Red Wings re-sign him, this is the most galaxy brain best trade the Red Wings have made in like 20 years.
It already did like stumble backwards into being an amazing trade. And I thought it was like a fine one originally. Like I remember our discussions and we were all hoping for more, and we had varying degrees of who was happy and who was upset. And I like where I landed was I would have loved to first. I'm not awful. Like I don't feel terrible about 2 seconds, but yeah, like you said, just with how things shook out, how many games he played and what's happening right now in the NHL and the world, shit, 2 seconds for Andreas, like 4 games of Andreas Athanasiou is already a steal. So if they get him back, whoa.
It like is one thing of Ken Holland. I'm just coming up with this thought off the top of my head, so I have no thought behind it. So if it comes off as stupid, feel free to call me out on it like I know you will. In previous trades, did Ken Holland always acquire players Mike Babcock liked, or did he just pick whoever and then Babcock completely misplayed them? Because you're Ken Holland in Edmonton trading for one of the most gifted forwards on the market offensively, but is a defensive liability, and you're bringing him into a team where you have a coach who hates everybody that isn't defensively gifted unless they put up over 100 points. So immediately, it took 2 games for Athanasiou to be demoted into the bottom 6 in Edmonton despite scoring in his first game with Connor McDavid. How do you misread that? A, Ken Holland had Athanasiou. He knew exactly who he was. Traded for him with a coach who anybody could have guessed would hate him. And then said coach hates him. And then they end up in a cap crunch through no fault of Ken Holland's. But like, Jesus, is this... I feel like he's done this before, but I never paid too much close attention to that, so I can't actually speak to it.
It's big Michael Bluth opening a bag that says "Dead dove, do not eat," and saying, "I don't know what I expected." Like you said, it's what Athanasiou was not a mystery. Red Wings fans would have told you the league was watching Athanasiou for a long time because he was a potential trade target for a long time. Everyone knew who Athanasiou was. I don't know, like, I hesitate to add another thing to the pile of here's why I'm criticizing, the last 5 years of Ken Holland. But like you said, if you're picking up this guy, is there not some kind of phone call to your coach and saying, hey, this guy's not your favorite kind of player, but shit, he'll help out. He'll be viable on Connor's line. He has the skill to play with him and the speed to keep up. We can spread out the talent in the top 6 and we might win a series or two here. But no, he gets demoted because he's not the player that he never was.
Edmonton has been looking for wingers to play with McDavid since McDavid's been drafted. Ken Holland picks up the phone and says, hey, Stevie, I need the 30-goal scoring winger who can actually skate stride for stride with Connor McDavid. How you don't relay that message to your coach is staggering to me. And I mean, I'm a big believer in giving coaches autonomy. I hate when GMs meddle with coaching decisions, but this was a decision that the coach and the GM needed to make before the trade was made. Because if Tippett said, well, if this guy can't play defense, I'm not putting him in my top line. I'm not putting him in my top 6. And Ken Holland could go, fair enough. Hey, Stevie, sorry, we're going to pass. I mean, that's how, like, after the trade, Ken Holland's not responsible for any of that. Dave Tippett should be free to do what he wants with that player, but it's insane to me. And now there's a 30-goal scoring winger who's going to be hitting the market, and Edmonton's getting nothing in return because they may not be able to qualify him because he's got ARB rates.
Look, I know you like you mentioned it's not likely, but I'd be happy. I'd be so happy, even if it's a short-term deal, even if it's a 1-year deal, just to trade him again. I'd be so happy to have him back in Detroit. It would cost the team nothing. It would just add even more value to the insane return that Yzerman got on that trade.
It would be relevant again.
Yeah.
You can unburn those jerseys.
But, yeah, I still got a gut feeling it's going to end up being Buffalo, but we'll see.
And then finally, and this is going to transition into Red Wings news. The biggest conversation for Red Wings fans today in terms of free agency was the announcement from Elliot Friedman that, Jimmy Howard himself said that he's not done playing if he can help it, but it doesn't seem likely that he's going back to Detroit. And that's not earth-shattering. I mean, Yzerman has had some coded talk where he's kind of alluded to the fact that he wasn't interested in bringing back Howard. And now Howard has kind of mentioned the same thing about Detroit. It makes a lot of sense. If I got absolutely shelled behind this team for the better part of a decade with zero support or success to show for it, I'd want to go too. He hasn't had a great past couple seasons. There's a pretty significant drop off in his career, quite obviously. It aligns pretty well with age curves and the fact that nobody can hold up to that kind of sustained pressure with no support. So you're not going to find me as one of those people who are going to, rip on Jimmy Howard, but it's the right move moving forward. Like, bringing back Jimmy Howard wouldn't do anything for this Red Wings team, and it wouldn't do anything for him. So
no. And with how strong this goalie market is, this is one of the areas Detroit should be aggressive this offseason, and they could take two approaches, because as good as Jonathan Bernier was last year, he's not young and he's only got 1 year left on his contract before unrestricted free agency. I mean, if the relationship's good, hopefully the Red Wings bring him back for another 2 to 3 years, but he's a UFA. They can't guarantee that. So if they're looking at the free agent market, they should be looking for a pretty decent succession plan in the 2 to 3 to 4 year range at a reasonable cap hit, or they're looking at a team with a goalie with a bad contract that they could get assets for, but is also good enough to maybe bridge that gap for Detroit. Maybe Matt Murray in Pittsburgh, hypothetically. That's why before the other trade happened, we were talking about Jake Allen would make a ton of sense to come to Detroit, but even though he's a little shorter term. Jimmy isn't the answer anymore because he's not a succession plan to Bernier. Even if he filled in as a backup admirably this year, it wouldn't matter. So I think Detroit's got an opportunity here with how saturated the market is to get good value one way or another, whether that's getting a underappreciated goalie for less dollars in free agency or getting an asset to take on a bloated contract from another team. I mean, we laugh about it, but 2 years of Marc-Andre Fleury wouldn't hurt right now. And with his cap hit, they could probably get something decent with him.
No, and conversely, Vegas picking up Howard as a backup wouldn't be a bad idea either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. Howard said he's going to play till someone tells him he can't, and based on all the goalies that are going to be available right now,
Might be
the rest of the NHL might be telling him that very soon. As sad as it would be to see him go out that way. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a massive goalie carousel this offseason. Detroit's going to be right in the middle of it, and I don't know what way I hope they go, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, someone asked me earlier, they said, who do you want backing up Bernier? And my answer is someone cheap and someone who can handle mentally playing 30 games behind this Red Wings team this year. Like, I don't want someone who's going to break records and drag this team out of the basement. Not because I don't want to see the team win. No, of course. I want to see Detroit win, but I just don't think that's realistic. I want someone who can just hold the fort. If we're going to lose, let's lose by 2 or 3 and not 5 or 8, you know? Like, those games are depressing. Like, I keep thinking back to that Minnesota game where they just got absolutely demolished. I think they scored like 7 goals on us. There's no need for that. It's a big ask still because this team isn't very good offensively or defensively, quite obviously, but I don't have anyone in mind. Like, yeah, we had dreams of Lehner and Khudobin, and now look where those two are or were, like, right? So you're not going to get a premier journeyman backup. That market's kind of dried up. Like Grice out of the island, I'd be happy with. Like someone who's proven that they can find success at a reasonable rate. You're not asking them to start a bunch of games, whatever. And then when Detroit trades Bernier at the deadline, let's say they manage that this year, they can step in and close out the season.
So on that topic, because I haven't had a favorite emerge yet in terms of who I want the Red Wings to sign. Obviously, someone younger would be ideal. So I got pretty far down the goalie free agency list to see who I kind of had my eye on for Detroit. So he's coming off a bad year, objectively, but he's pretty young. I think he's 26 or 27, but he had a massive year the year before, so it could have been a fluke year. If I'm Detroit, I'm probably looking at a guy like Laurent Brossoit. He's going to come in dirt cheap with the market, but
oh yeah,
he had a bad year this year, but the year before in 21 games, he put up a .925 save percentage. He had an 8-game stretch in Edmonton where he put up a .928, and that's really saying something because he did that in Edmonton. So boom or bust, and if he busts, who cares? You're going to get him short term for basically no money. If he hits, hey, problem solved. And I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be the guy that I'm going to marry myself to in free agency for a Red Wings goaltender, but if you don't get a Khudobin or something like that, this is the type of guy you should be eyeing.
Yeah. So, and like you said, dirt cheap. You're talking about like $1 million or under $1 million for that.
Like
that's all you want.
You could replace him mid-season, no problem, if things go real south.
That'll be a name where they'll sign him, and then 80% of the replies to it will be saying, "Who?
Who? What? Who?" Yeah. And again, it could be him. It could be a half dozen other goalies exactly like him. But that was just the name that when I was perusing Cap Friendly, like, jumped at me.
Yeah. Okay. Other Red Wings news. Filip Zadina is sustained an upper body injury playing over in the Czech Republic and is out for at least a few weeks, it seems. Shitty news. I don't know too much about the actual injury. I don't know if you guys do.
That was all I heard.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything beyond that. Oh my God, can we not have anything nice?
Yeah, apparently not. It isn't ideal, and that's the kind of thing you're worried about when players go over to Europe or to play for not your team. But that said, the NHL is not really coming back until at least December or January, so it's not going to eat into Red Wings timeline here. You just hope that it's not any kind of serious injury. There hasn't been any inclination of that quite yet, so that sucks to hear. But in some good Red Wings news, either Red Wings prospects or Red Wings potential prospects had a great weekend especially over in Sweden. I don't know, Brad, if you want to kick us off and talk about that.
Yeah, so I would say the most promising sign for Red Wings fans. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about this, we're talking about mostly preseason and then one regular season game in the SHL. But Jonathan Bergeron started his regular season in the AHL with a goal and an assist in his season opener. So, again, that's in the SHL. That's the top league. This is very, very promising because this is his draft plus 3 year after coming off 2 major injuries the 2 previous seasons. So the fact that he's playing in the top 6 in the SHL is a very good starting point. And the fact that in his first game he produced, fantastic. Couldn't have asked for a better start. So Bergeron's looking dangerous. 2 points despite only playing about 13 minutes. And in the same league, Albert Johansson, our smooth skating left-handed defenseman there, also started with a goal and an assist in his first SHL game. So, I mean, both these guys could be key cogs in the Red Wings' future, and both of them started very, very well. On Twitter, people were talking about it, and Yoki, who we had on the podcast very recently, was comparing Albert Johansson to Nate Schmidt as a possible comparable for the way his direction's going. And boy, if you get a Nate Schmidt late in the second round, that's a home run.
Yeah, those are 2 prospects where they've had kind of different trajectories so far. So Johansson, those will remember when he was drafted, it was kind of a little bit, not a head scratcher, but we were kind of like, seems a little early. But then Hakan Andersson and some other scouts were talking about him as potentially the steal of that crop of defensemen. And so people have kind of been watching him pretty earnestly because of that. And even before last weekend, his progression and development up until now has been really, really impressive. So yeah, that's a comparison you love to see, and you hope that continues because he's left-handed. He's on the left side, right? Correct, I should say. Yeah. Left, right. And that's huge for Detroit because you look at where their strength is on defense right now, and I use that term pretty loosely. You have Hronek and Mo Seider on the right side. Let's say they go crazy and take Drysdale this year. There's another defenseman on the right side. That left side needs to shore up. So you need guys like Johansson and McIsaac to turn out. Bergeron, on the other hand, with some devastating injuries, a lot of time missed in formative years of hockey, this has to be his best year of development ever for him to project how he was. Because when he was drafted, that was a first round talent that Detroit got in the second round, right? Like we were talking about him as if when Detroit took Veleno, we would have been happy if they took Bergeron then. So it's definitely a weekend of good news on that front.
I still just like reminiscing about the 2018 draft in the immediate aftermath where the Red Wings drafted 4 players I had ranked in my first round.
Yeah, that was a nice one.
Those were happier times.
That is great news for the Red Wings. The Lucas Raymond rise continues.
Okay, before anybody says anything, we know small sample size and know what he's doing right now isn't going to dramatically change anybody's opinion of what Lucas Raymond is. This isn't going to dramatically change how the Red Wings view Lucas Raymond. His incredibly good preseason and hot start to the regular season is going to either confirm or deny some suspicions they had about them. So this is going to be, if they already thought Lucas Raymond was a great player and they were torn, like let's say they were 50-50 between him and another prospect, this would tip them towards him because he's just confirming everything positive people thought about him. If they were maybe a little lower on him, maybe now they're having more of a conversation about it. I mean, nobody's going from ranking Lucas Raymond 10th overall to 3rd because of the last 3 weeks. But he might jump up to from 4 to 3 on some team sports. He might jump up from 6 to 4. I mean, again, if the Red Wings were dead split on Perfetti and Raymond, because we've heard both of them linked to the Red Wings at 4, this could be the tiebreaker. The fact that the Red Wings are seeing him do it. He's doing it in a lot of ways. He's, in a league against men. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the confirmation we needed. He's our guy.
I don't know if it's been enough for Ottawa to take him 3rd. I really don't see him getting past 5, though. Like, I know there's been conversations about him slipping even beyond that, but I really, really don't see him getting past 5. And we knew this would happen. The moment the schedule shook out and we realized the SHL would have like 9 or 10 games before the draft, we knew this would happen because Raymond's biggest issue was underexposure last season. It doesn't make me like, I don't want to sit here and say I told you so, because I know the moment we put that on the record, we're going to get burned and Raymond will be a bust, and, you know, Perfetti or Sanderson is going to be like the best player out of the draft. That's not Lafreniere, but still, it is nice that it's a little bit more validating, because it felt for a while that when you talked about Raymond and saying, yeah, he might have the most talent out of the draft outside of the top 3, a lot of people were like, really? Because I don't see that at all. Like, I don't see how you want him over Rossi. I don't see how you want him over Perfetti. So it's nice to kind of have a little bit of more exposure on that end for the fans to see the broad options for the Red Wings in this draft. As Brad, whenever you like look up and look away, I'm always expecting someone to like drop out of the ceiling and then like
a light falls through the floor.
Yeah.
Mika's done crazier things, honestly. I've got a vent on this side that she could probably shimmy through if she pulled the grate up, but I don't know. I just heard something like fall upstairs, but nobody's on the floor above me and both kids are sleeping. So I get deeply confused when I hear noises when we're recording now.
Hank needs to stop dropping the weights when he's deadlifting.
Yeah, honestly, kid's too strong for his own good already.
Hank curls in a squat rack.
My son would.
No one can say no because he's the biggest guy in the gym. No.
He gives Brad piggybacks when Brad gets tired.
Honestly, why else have kids?
To mow your lawn? Is he doing that yet?
The only other one I can think of.
Yeah, while giving me a piggyback. Someone's got to point out the spots he missed, and I'm not doing that from the porch.
All right. This episode's prospect profile. So we are running through every single possible, or at least halfway likely, Red Wings 4th overall pick. And this is one that we've covered before in terms of a prospect profile, but not with the deeper analysis and the context of, this is a guy you might reasonably expect to hear Steve Yzerman call out at 4th overall. So we'll talk a little bit about likelihood. We'll talk about where he fits in the system. Some of it will be an overlap, but still that's okay because he's an exciting prospect, none other than defenseman Jamie Drysdale. In my opinion, the best defenseman in the draft. There's some who will advocate for primarily Jake Sanderson, but nonetheless, you guys know who Jamie Drysdale is. Brad, take us away.
So we talked recently in our prospect profile about what Jamie Drysdale is. So a quick recap for those of you who missed that episode. High skill, high offense, all around, terrific defenseman, slightly undersized, right-handed shooting, right D, close to a point per game in the OHL this year. Fantastic skater, fantastic transition defenseman, still strong defensively and still strong offensively. The complete package. The only question with him is what is his ultimate upside? Because is he going to be Erik Karlsson? Is he going to be Drew Doughty? Is he going to be Jeff Petrie? We don't know. Yeah, all great options and a very, very likely candidate to be good and not bust. But we don't know. But again, without beating that dead horse, what would Jamie Drysdale mean if he gets drafted by the Red Wings? Because this is the most fascinating discussion in terms of organizational need in terms of this draft. Because I would argue the Red Wings' depth on the roster and in prospects sucks everywhere but right D. Because currently on the projected opening lineup for next year, you're going to have Hronek, Seider, Bowie, Biega for right-handed shooting defensemen's options. Say what you want about Biega or Bowie, but whatever. They're short-term and they can fit in on the right side for now. Drysdale wouldn't play next year. Then in the system beyond that, you also have Antti Tuomisto. So if you're big on Tuomisto, and obviously we're big on Seider and Hronek, there's your right side for the next half decade to decade. It's pretty set in. Adding Drysdale to that's not necessarily a bad thing. You want competition, you want flexibility, because there's no guarantee Seider or Tuomisto pan out. The way their production and their growth has gone since they've been drafted, in the year since they've been drafted, it's promising, it's positive. I don't think anybody's betting against them yet, but you never know. So Drysdale adds another layer of insurance to that. The Red Wings did tinker with Filip Hronek on the left side during this season as well. Don't know that I love that, but that's always an option as well. Defensemen don't have to be married to their strong side, even though it is a heavy advantage to do it. It's as much as I love Drysdale and as much as I love his offensive upside more than every other defenseman in the Red Wings system currently, it would be kind of hard to stomach that pick knowing that literally every other position is a much bigger need right now. They're not looking stacked at left wing. They're not looking stacked at center. They're not looking stacked at right wing. They're not looking stacked at lefty, and they're not looking stacked at net. Not that I'm advocating to pick Askarov, just saying. The only other position you could argue might be a position of strength for them would be left wing. But none of the guys we're really considering here are left wingers, if you believe Cole Perfetti's a center. So it's fascinating. It's interesting. If they truly believe far and away he's the best player available at number 4, they absolutely should take him. But if there's a debate or if there's a tie, I don't think it should go to him.
All right. Drysdale, the player. Like you said, Brad, we've covered him before. The reason he stands out for me is because his skating is like cerebral. And as someone who's had to eat shit every time I watch Quinn Hughes play hockey because he was not my first or second favorite pick for Detroit that year.
Did you notice Evan's face when you said, as someone who? Because he definitely thought you were going somewhere else with that statement.
I got my bingo dabber out.
You watch what makes Quinn Hughes able to overcome any kind of deficiencies that people projected that he has. Besides, elite skill, the way he skates is up there. And Drysdale has that in spades. I believe this guy is the best defenseman in the draft. I believe his offensive ability, his transition game, the way he's able to kind of quarterback the play either on the power play or just entering the offensive zone or working the blue line, phenomenal. That's what sets him apart. I don't think he's bad defensively. I don't think he's a phenomenal defender, but you look at a guy you want in your first pairing, that's kind of the way it shakes out in the modern NHL. More to what Brad said, he fits into that Sanderson category for me. Like, taking Drysdale is almost like an implicit, yeah, we took Seider last year, but he might not be a first pairing defenseman. And do you do that? Do you, because not both of those guys are going to play on the top pairing, or one of them's going to have to flip to their weak side. And as you've alluded to, it's not always, they can't always do that. It doesn't always shake out that way. Not saying they can't, but you draft a guy at that level, at that, 4th overall, or possibly a top 3 pick in terms of talent, you want to play them at their position of strength. So do you take a right-handed defenseman when you just did it? Same question I have with Sanderson. Do you take a defenseman with the same mold as Seider when you just did that in the face of all that other need? That's my thing. I like Jamie Drysdale. I think he'll be a fantastic defenseman. And are we getting too galaxy brained by saying, no, the puzzle has to be built with these pieces in this specific order? Or do we say, yeah, we just took Seider. Doesn't mean another good right-handed defenseman can't exist. And if we think he's the best player, we'll take him. And then in 5 years, we'll figure out if this conversation is even still relevant. I don't know. I don't envy Steve Yzerman.
So 2 things. I'm still a big believer in the philosophy of you take the best player on your board. If you truly believe Jamie Drysdale is the best player there when you are drafting, you take him. Positional need be damned. I don't care if they have 9 right-handed shooting defensemen in the system. If he is truly the best, you take him. But let's assume and this draft is a great example of this, where there's legitimately 6 guys that could go in this number 4 spot, and talent-wise, there is not a huge gap between them. So Detroit could very reasonably find themselves in a spot where they're like, okay, we can actually pick our poison here in terms of positioning. And we love to tout what Steve Yzerman's done in Tampa Bay, so it's worth looking at how Tampa Bay is constructed. Now, not all their players came via the draft, et cetera, but the current roster that they're throwing out there in the Cup Finals Almost every single one of their defensemen was taken in the first round, and 0 of their forwards were taken in the first round. The only first round forward they would have had he not been injured is Steven Stamkos. So if Yzerman truly believes, and this draft might be a perfect example of it, that he's going to get good offensive talent in the second round and the later rounds, yeah, we're going to get our defensemen now, and we'll swing for a bunch of forwards later. That's possible. This is how Tampa is constructed. I mean, they didn't draft Sergachev, but they gave up one of their first-round picks to acquire a first-round defenseman. They didn't draft Ryan McDonough, but they gave up a first-round forward and Brett Howden as part of a package to get Ryan McDonough. So even if you say they didn't draft these defensemen first overall, they gave up first-round picks for these defensemen. So in a circular way, it still adds up. They got lucky, and there's no way around it. They got lucky that Kucherov and Point fell to where they got them, and the Red Wings absolutely cannot bank on that, because looking back at it, hindsight 2020, those guys should have never went to the second and third round, because sometimes guys just progress out of nowhere and randomly get a lot better. Tyler Bertuzzi is a great example of that. These guys were among the top producers in their draft years. They just had, Kucherov had the Russian factor and Point had the skating factor, but they were producing. So hindsight 2020, it was dumb they fell. But look at the rest. Yanni Gourde, undrafted free agent. Andre Palat was a 5th or a 6th round pick. Tyler Johnson was undrafted. I mean, they found a lot of value outside of the first round, even beyond Kucherov and Point. I don't know if I love this theory, but it worked in Tampa. History has shown it's easier to project forwards in the first round than it is defensemen. Okay, so what does Yzerman believe here? Now, in his very short history with the Red Wings, he drafted defensemen with 3 of his first 4 picks last year. What does that mean for this draft? Absolutely nothing, because you can read into it both ways. Oh, they got their defensemen last year. They don't need to worry about Drysdale this year. Or they really value defensemen. They're going to value him again this year. So Drysdale's the ultimate wild card, and the way Yzerman's conducted business doesn't make you think that Drysdale's out of the question.
Evan, are any words left for you here, or have they been robbed from you again?
I think there's like 3 words left on the final page of the thesaurus that I could potentially add. But I think you're all in the right, thinking that Drysdale's a potential target. Why wouldn't he be? You watch him play and you see shades of some of the top young defensemen in the league right now, and to have one of those in Detroit would be awesome. But I think a forward is what is needed right now, because we really need someone to really drive the offense. Not saying Drysdale wouldn't, but we need a forward who's going to be doing that.
Yeah, the thing here is that this is a mixture because of the actual circumstance and the fact that we've had 1 billion years to think about this draft. But there are so many possible avenues that all lead to good to great to perfect options for the Red Wings. And busts, of course. But like Brad said, 6 or 7 players here, and the margin between them is so thin. You can prescribe to the theory that, yeah, of course you'd want a forward here, but if you believe this defenseman is the best, then you deal with the forwards later, or you go with what Evan just said, which is that, yeah, that top defenseman would be nice, but you don't have any support talent or any true superstar talent, and you'd rather go for that. It's a tough decision, and there's so much future projection in it. And all I keep thinking about every single time I start to rank and analyze and project the draft is that I do not envy Steve Yzerman. It's good for us as fans and as talking heads, because there's a lot of avenues where I'm happy here. And I think that's something that comes from the fact that we were broken by the Seider pick last year, because that came so far out of left field. But it also adds a layer of complexity, because like you don't want to be the team that misses out on Quinn Hughes, and you certainly don't want to be the team that misses out on Quinn Hughes twice, right? So you try to learn from that and say, what did I do wrong where I missed such an obviously good pick?
But if you miss a Quinn Hughes and end up with an Elias Pettersson, you're not devastated.
Yeah, and the cruel fact of that is Jim Benning got both of them, so here's the hockey gods for you.
But could Lucas Raymond be Elias Pettersson? Maybe. Not betting on it, but maybe. Nobody was betting on Elias Pettersson to be Elias Pettersson when he was picked, or else he would have went first, and he went fifth.
Well, so the story goes is that the Red Wings bet on Elias Pettersson being Elias Pettersson.
I think in our mock draft we had him falling to 9 that year, and I'm crushed now.
I think we've grown a lot because we did a lot of hopeful mock drafts. A lot of stuff.
Now we're like now we do our mock drafts like, okay, we have to do this. How are the teams ahead of us going to absolutely screw us? Now, just a small thought as we're getting so far into the weeds and all these prospects and Drysdale again. A thought I had, what the hell would this podcast have been for the last 2.5 months if we won the draft lottery? Like really, what would we have done?
Analyzing every player ranked 20 and later and pretty much assigning the same kind of hype to them at pick 32 as we are at pick 4.
We literally would have had episode breakdowns based on Lafreniere's skill set. And today we are covering Alexis Lafreniere's backhand.
Like that, but unironically. It's either that or like Emile Andre, here's his 4th game of the preseason and his 12-year-old year playing AAA hockey. Like that's the level we would have gotten to. We would have given Evan a lot more leeway for golf, you a lot more leeway for Josh Allen, and me a lot more leeway for just like empty whining into the void. That says a lot, eh? Like those are our 3 habits: golf, the Buffalo Bills, and whining.
I can't lie. I'm looking up the U.S. Open statistics right now.
You watched it.
Yeah, but I wanted to know who was leading in driving distance this week, and it was actually kind of surprising. There was a Canadian ranked 3rd. Taylor Pendrith.
Never heard of him.
Does he shoot right? Hit right? What do you say in golf? Swing right? Left?
Yeah, it's the same as hockey.
Swing?
Yeah. Well, sorry, right. No, you say swing. I guess shoot works too. I've heard them use shoot, but that's all my hockey buddies who say that, so maybe that's not the best example.
Anyways, upcoming prospect profiles. We have Stützle, Perfetti, and Raymond. We're not going to tell you the order because we kind of figure it out as we go as well. We're trying to get some other conversations in there as well without spoiling too much. So that's what you can look forward to. And then, of course, our final draft rankings and our final mock draft rankings, and then full draft preview before the big day. So look forward to that. And then for now, any other news before we head into overtime? The Senators went back to their 2D logo.
I thought everyone knew that.
Well, yeah, that's been rumored for a while. I'm so happy they did because I got tired of looking at those abominations 6 games a year.
Okay, we will start off overtime, which is going to kick off with our Patreon supporters. Everyone who supports us on Patreon gets their comment read out during the overtime segment, and that's a way of saying thank you. Whether we are talking about Lafreniere's, backhand or a full rundown on every 4th overall pick leading up to the draft, every possible 4th overall pick, the patrons are the reason we're able to do that. So thank you guys. First comment from Ben Shapiro reading WAP for an hour. Says, Bergeron looks good. Johansson too. Disappointed you guys didn't do a video on your last episode. Wanted to see Brad laugh his ass off. Yeah, Evan's fancy mega computer wasn't actually able to hit record on the episode, which made it a little bit difficult. So apologies for that. We actually don't have a guarantee that this episode that we're talking about right now doesn't have the same thing. We only found out at the end, so.
It's still recording. I just looked.
Whew. Between your U.S. Open stats, you've got us covered, Evan.
Yep.
Dylan Krill says, hey guys, build the perfect prospect using traits from prospects in this draft. For example, Stützle's agility, Byfield's size, and use the following traits. Okay, well, so we'll go one by one here. Hockey sense.
Hockey sense? Lafreniere.
Playmaking.
Ooh, playmaking. That one's Perfetti.
I was going to say Perfetti, Drysdale, or wouldn't be a bad one in there. Raymond either. Shooting is Holtz.
Holtz, definitely.
Stick handling.
Raymond?
Perfetti might have been a nice one for that as well. Raymond.
Perfetti or Raymond there for me. I could.
Speed, Stützle.
Yep.
Agility.
Raymond.
Drysdale. Raymond. Size, Byfield.
Yeah, obviously.
Defensive awareness, Rossi. Outside shot, Sanderson.
I was going to go Sanderson there.
Yeah, if you want to go true defenseman, Sanderson. Nick Hill says, hey guys, or hey all, I've been too busy to watch hockey lately. Who knew a master's program takes up a lot of your time? Dallas is 3 wins away from winning the cup, just as we expected. Do you see this as a sign that the Red Wings would be better off building from the defense out? And is Drysdale a better defenseman than Raymond or Rossi are forwards? Thanks, guys. So that second question.
I would say no, or else I would have Drysdale ranked higher than that. Yeah, and if you're looking at what the Red Wings have done so far, I would argue they are building from the back end out. Our offensive prospects outside of Veleno and Bergeron leave a lot to be desired, and Bergeron's still a huge risk, but I think we're all pretty happy to this point with Seider, Tuomisto, McIsaac, and Johansson, so...
I'm going to call it dead heat because I can't discount the fact that I might have bias against Drysdale just because I'm not looking ideally for a defenseman in this draft. I think the world of Drysdale. I don't think he's like a Heiskanen level defenseman, but I think he perfectly well could be. I can't say for sure that he's not a better defenseman than Rossi as a forward. I'd probably put Raymond pretty comfortably ahead, but it's close. Joe Caboose 119Z Falzone says, I keep flipping between Raymond and Perfetti. Send help. Yeah, I'll let you know when we figure it out, man.
Yeah, you and the rest of the fan base.
Rossi too, and every once in a while, I think any of them could be better than Stützle or Byfield. Where do you put the ceilings and floors for Tuomisto?
Second pairing, first power play QB.
And
Ceiling.
The floor is not in the NHL.
Yeah.
McIsaac, I have
number 4 shutdown D.
Floor not in the NHL, and Johansson is
number 3 two-way defenseman.
And then Brad did a little bit of conversation there about stylistic comparisons. In terms of players, I'm not really sure who to compare them to. I'd never thought of it before Yoki pointed out, but I love the Nate Schmidt comparison for Johansson.
Jared McIsaac, he's a little tougher because I don't pay super close attention to teams' middle pair defensive defensemen. Who's your sound defenseman that you don't hear a lot from? Like every team has one and we can't remember who they are.
Patrick Nemeth.
Maybe actually. I like McIsaac's offensive upside a little bit more than that, but
yeah. Chris B says same thing as last show. Who would you rather have right now? Kotkaniemi or Hayton?
Kotkaniemi.
I'd probably say Kotkaniemi as well. Sanderson or Broberg?
Sanderson.
I'll go Sanderson here as well. Evan's nodding,
yes.
For those of you who can't. Yeah.
Sorry, apparently no one listens to our voice versions. Everyone watches the YouTube one, so I just nod now.
Oh, well, we're almost at 10:30, so Sassy Evan has come out. It's past my bedtime.
It's way past my bedtime.
Perfetti or Zegras?
Perfetti. I like this draft a lot more than I liked last year's draft, and I have Perfetti on my rankings right where I had Zegras on mine last year. So,
and there's a chance Perfetti sticks at center.
Yeah, I just like Perfetti's talent more.
That could be the breaker right there.
Although there's nothing to say Zegras couldn't.
Zegras is more likely to play center than Perfetti in my mind, but I just like Perfetti, but he's better as a player.
Perfetti understanding there's more risk. Raymond or Zegras?
Raymond.
I also have Raymond there. Hischier or Suzuki? I have Nico Hischier. I think people sleep on him a little bit.
I like Suzuki.
I'm torn. I'm gonna go Hischier just because he's proven more at the NHL. Yeah, I'm gonna go Hischier.
And Johansson or Tuomisto? Johansson because left side.
Johansson because shown more at a higher level.
Okay, Charlie Sidleric says, Dallas played a great game Saturday night, and while I didn't see them making it past Colorado, here they are. I still think Tampa will win the cup if they lose to Dallas. Do you guys think something in Tampa organization will change drastically? Seemed like last year was the year and Columbus swept them. Yeah, I do agree. I think, well, I mean, because of the cap and because of they need to change something will change there.
I'm going to say no. They've made the conference finals 4 out of this last 6 years, and they've run into like a fluky injury to a superstar every single one. So I still maintain a healthy Tampa is the cup favorite every year until otherwise noted.
Liz B says, in my head, I knew Howard probably wouldn't be back, but then to see that he now actually said he won't be makes me sad. He should have won the Calder Trophy in 2010, and no one will ever be able to change my mind. But his play in March that year was 90% of the reason Detroit made it to the playoffs. Someone will sign him as a backup, and I hope whoever does is one that might actually win a cup next season. Edmonton can maybe win next season, right? Aw. Maybe.
You must be new around here.
No, I mean, you can never discount a team with Connor McDavid, but a lot would have to change in Edmonton. The towering behemoth Leviathan says, so with the Red Wings entering a new Swedish era, who do you rank as the best Swedish goalie prospect? The Griffins, Philip Larsson, Fardjestads, Jesper Eliasson, or Victor Brattström of Kuku in the Finnish Liga. I say Brattström has the edge right now, but he is also the oldest at 23. Also, I don't know this for a fact. I just know it is true. I don't know this for a fact, but I just know it is true. If Evan used his fortune to buy an NFL franchise, it'd be called the 69ers.
This is a fact. And for the question, I'm going to still go Philip Larsson. He's the most talented as long as he can stay healthy, which he hasn't been able to do yet. So he's still a big question mark, but he still has the most talent.
Also noted that speaking of Swedish goalie prospects, the Red Wings should draft Kalle Klang, really good prospect with the most goalie name ever. The Caminator says, this question is mostly for Brad because I know how much of a passion he has for landscaping, but can be answered by all three. As a recent home buyer, I need to reseed much of my lawn. Is it a better idea to reseed the lawn at the end of the season, right now, like fall time, or at the start of the summer? Thanks, and go for Frölunda.
You should do it at both.
You should dig it up and get rid of it.
Just landscape the whole thing and not have grass.
Here's what you do. You dig it up, you make it flat, you put skatable tiles on it, and you turn it into a mini hockey rink. If I had my way, that's what my front yard would be.
What you really do is you dig it up, make it flat, and then put a putting green down.
Another great option.
I think what Evan said, which is do both. Like it can't hurt to seed in the fall, right? I just don't think... It seems like we're getting a little bit of an early frost this year, so I'm not sure if anything will take. But on the off chance you can get stuff to root, it won't hurt, and then you just do it again in the spring.
I can confirm the early frost because as I've been going to the gym earlier and earlier every day, it seems, I wear my workout gear to the gym and then bring my work clothes in my gym bag. So, I can just walk in, throw my bag in a locker, and go start working out. I didn't realize how rapidly it would get cold. So a few days ago, I was outside scraping frost off the windshield of my car in t-shirt and shorts. So yeah, it's here.
I got an email from the golf course yesterday that there was a frost delay. That's how I knew it was cold.
John Evans says, hello, gentlemen. Greetings from Ohio. Say it ain't so about Howard. I was really hoping they'd bring him back for another year, but according to Frege, it isn't going to happen. Guy spends his whole career in Detroit. They shouldn't let him go out on a 2-win season. Plus, what are we really going to accomplish with the replacement? Another 2 or 3 wins and ultimately the same spot in the standings? I'm sure he'll get a PTO somewhere, but it just sucks. Anyways, keep up the great work. Haroon Khan says, my God, Matt Patricia is so inept. This might be a reach, but seeing Howard's announcement and then seeing Stafford play for the Lions made me feel so bad today. Zadina injured too. Who cursed the city? Today was a bad Detroit day.
Who sold your soul for the '08 Cup? Because that's when it all started going downhill. You did this.
We didn't need to. We bought all those good players. The soul wasn't necessary. We had a Lidstrom. Sam W says, hey guys, love the show. This may be coming in a tad late, but I'll ask anyways. After watching Elias Pettersson sort of torch the SHL in his draft plus 1 year, having played in the Allsvenskan the year prior, how much upside can we reasonably project for the group of Swedes that played SHL minutes this year leading up to the NHL draft? The SHL is an easier barometer, right? Like, it's not an unknown league like the DEL where Seider came out of. Like, it's one of the best leagues in hockey. So you can more comfortably draw those comparisons in terms of how much upside can we reasonably project. Like, I think Lucas Raymond could be a superstar. Maybe not like top 5 winger in the league, but I think his ceiling isn't terribly far off from that.
I think his ceiling is Mitch Marner. So for whatever that's worth to you, the SHL and league are, when you look at the high end sub 20 players, like under 20 players who have torched that league, the translation rate is very high. It's very, I'm not going to say easy to project, but you can comfortably project prospects out of those two leagues. Again, U20, there's like 22-year-olds who torch those leagues and never come over, which it happens, but if Lucas Raymond in his 18-year-old year is a point per game player in the SHL, yeah, he's going to torch the NHL.
Okay, next question here is from Chris Smith, who says, now that Gardy has retired from the Tigers, I think it's safe to crown Jeff Blashill as the best coach in Detroit. If we can manage to get 65 points next year, that should be enough to give the Wings the best winning percentage of every Detroit team. Hell yeah. That is depressing beyond anything else that's been depressing today. Thank you, Chris. And I hate it. Michael Barry says, let's say we play the role of the Leafs in the trade involving Robin Lehner this offseason. What would be your price for $3.5 million in cap retained for 1 year, a 3rd round pick? I would try to up that just because of the cap scarcity this year. It's
a tricky question. No, I can't talk. It's too late. It's a tricky question to answer directly because the rest of the circumstance. So if we swung and missed on every other bad contract, like if we couldn't get Louis Eriksson, if we couldn't get Alex Killorn, if we couldn't get Kyle Turris, if we couldn't get one of these bad contracts for anything better, I would comfortably settle for a 3rd or a 4th round pick to retain 3.5 for 1 year. Like, in a vacuum, and we're not using that cap space for anything else, great. Literally any pick would be fine for that. I think a 3rd or 4th would be fair. That being said, if you are eyeballing bigger fish to get 1st and 2nd round picks or better prospects, yeah, you don't want to eat up $3 million and change from your cap hit for a 3rd or 4th round pick. So circumstance would matter heavily on that for me.
This next question is my least favorite one of the day. It's from Evan Pardo. He says, donating my time to Brad so we can talk about the Bills and Josh Allen. Brad, I'll give you like 15 seconds. You get 15 seconds.
This is the happiest I've ever been as a football fan, and it's 2 games into the season. This is what it's like to be a Buffalo Bills fan. Well, this and the most happy I've been.
And your 15 seconds is up. The next question is from
Baltimore Cincy 3 years ago.
Finger Gun Stars Brad fan. Gun Stars fan Brad 1-0 says, "G'day dud duds, it's me again. Lifelong Stars fan and Finger Guns advocate Rob Kopp show. Pretty fun game 1 as my favorite player and my idol in life, Corey Perry, is only 3 wins away from another cup, which I'm sure everyone loves. In an ongoing effort to be annoying, my 12-month crusade about Lucas Raymond will continue as he continues to do the hashtag good things in Sweden. Can you imagine how unbearable I'm going to be about this guy over the next few years, regardless of where he's drafted? Actually, yes, I'm sure you can. You've listened to me before. I'd recommend muting my mic and just editing the talkie show." Jersey time. Sadly, the Coyotes have been relocated to Houston. Give us their jersey colors / scheme and a franchise name. Ooh, that's fun. Houston Oilers. No, I'm kidding. Houston Aeros is the popular one.
Well, nostalgia always plays, right? I'm going to go with the Houston Garbage Cans, and they will just use the Astros colors.
Potential Houston NHL team names. Comets, Bulls, Giants.
Those are both terrible. Comets works because the NASA theme. I would probably go with like a NASA sort of theme if I was going hockey to Houston, which is probably why Arrows worked.
The Houston Columbus Blue Jackets.
The Houston Platinum Knights. Houston Apollos is sweet. I love Houston Apollos.
I like that one. The Houston
Cosmonauts. The Houston Cosmonauts.
Houston Apollo, and you use a deep purple as one of your primary colors.
Oh, man, you got to be black, like deep purple and black if you're doing the Houston Apollos. What about the Houston, the moon landing was fake?
Oh, man, we just got put in some sort of weird playlist on YouTube now.
Yes, I'm getting the conspiracy theory.
We're on the Zeitgeist playlist now.
The Houston Flat Earths.
All right. When you're a Lions fan and you watch the Lions, you're going to cut that one off early. Tie off a Stay Fresh cheese bag over your head and let the sweet, sweet release of death save you from watching them in week 3. Stay Fresh cheese bags, a Fournier company and a guarantee to make it stop or your money back. Speaking of which, Joseph Fournier says, Stay Fresh cheese bags, the official cheese bag of slow, sweet surrender into the everlasting void after another Lions loss. Can you guys see a theme in these comments? Proof that if there is a God, he hates us and has forsaken us. Stay Fresh cheese bags of Fournier Company. I went back to watching prospect reels of Rossi, Perfetti, and Raymond. Look at this. What a time to be alive. We're about to get one of these fellas, or one of a myriad of other options. But after watching the reels, I'm still on the Marco Rossi train. Update. My younger brother is a 36-year-old associate city manager of Ann Arbor and has doubled down on his Tyler Pertussi claim. Okay. Look. I like Tyler Bertuzzi a lot, and I love the city of Ann Arbor. Is your brother okay? Is this a cry for help?
So, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Is Tyler Bertuzzi the best skater on this team? No, probably not in the top half. Does he have the best shot on this team? No, probably not in the top half. Does he have the best hands on this team? No, but he might actually be in the top 3 on that one. He may have the claim for the best net front guy on the team. Rasmussen might have something to say about that soon. Does he have the highest hockey IQ on this team? No, but he might actually be in the top 3 on that one. When you're over on all of that stuff, it's you're not the best player on the team. And you're not the most skilled player on the team. That's the way it works. His skill to tooth ratio is probably the highest on the team, but still.
CNOD says, hey, you can knuckles. Evan's response to the boat question made me think y'all would appreciate this joke. American. Hey, do you want to watch the Titanic? Canadian. What's that about? American. Yeah, it was. A huge one that sank. Oh, I get that.
Oh, boo.
Because we say a boot instead of about. Did I say it twice there? About? I don't know. A boot? I don't know. I don't think it's too heavy. I think people from further up say it. Evan, say about.
They say it like about.
Yeah.
They say a boot.
A boot. We never say like a boot. I think you have to go a little further north to find that, but I think like, it's there.
Maritimers don't even say it a boot. Like, I don't know where that comes from. Like, Maritimers say a lot of things differently, and that's where more of your stereotypical Canadian accent comes from, but they don't even say it like that.
The moment you cross into Michigan, you find a lot more pronounced like a vowel sounds, like a lot of caffy, hacky. Oh, that's a little Boston. I don't know. I'm not good at this. Thanks for the pod. You guys are the best. Thank you, C-Nods. And then James Phoenix says, hey lads, all I will say to you is Jimmy Howard, man, single-handedly got us into the playoffs within the last decade. And I hope his legacy isn't remembered for the last 12 months of his career with Detroit. Thank you, number 35. Extremely well said. All right, time for a couple Reddit questions. Coltron57 says, just wanted to say how happily surprised I was to hear a Gerald Mayu name drop last episode. Local born and Ferris State alum. Wouldn't mind Yzerman acquiring him now that he's no longer waiver exempt if Minnesota has a roster crunch. Firmly believe he's someone who can score 15 to 20 in the bottom 6 role for whatever team gives him a chance to play. And Detroit doesn't exactly have an abundance of better options. Was that you who brought him up, Brad?
Yes, we were talking about Minnesota's prospects.
Rational Jester says Holland has already said he's willing to trade down for more picks. We have more picks in the second and third rounds, and if Askarov is still available before Edmonton picks, do you see Yzerman taking a shot at a franchise goalie, and what would you expect the cost to be?
The cost would be very high. I don't think picks in this draft would get it done because Edmonton's picking, what, 15? 14, 15, somewhere in there? So the picks from this draft, like the best asset Detroit, I don't think Detroit's next 3 picks, they could give them all 3 second rounders. I don't think that gets it done for number 15. And at that point, I think Detroit's better off just
14.
making those. Yeah, and at that point, I think Detroit's just better off making those picks and taking a swing at Nico Dawes or Yoel Blomqvist, honestly, as much as I like Askarov. So I'm a firm believer if Detroit can trade up to get Askarov, they should, but he'd have to slip into the 20s before that becomes reasonable.
Yeah, and in terms of how likely it is, like I know we joke a lot about how there's no way we'd want to take the risk on the goalie, but the reality is the level of prospect Askarov is, don't think that Yzerman and company aren't thinking about it and that they might not do it. He would be the potential answer net for a generation if he pans out. That's the kind of goalie he's looking to be. So definitely it's on the board. Kakaroto says the Coyotes are hanging on by a thread as a franchise. They're behind on rent to Gila River players and staff. They don't have a long-term arena deal. They're year to year in a rink that Gary Bettman hates. Their first pick for 2020 is in the 4th round, and they don't have a first or third in 2021. What are your thoughts on that team's future in Arizona going forward? We mentioned it the last couple episodes. Bleak.
If this were up to me, they would have been out of there years ago. This has never worked. This has literally never worked in Arizona, and they've been there since the 90s. It's cold, but this is an experiment that has failed for 2 decades, and I can't believe they're still trying to make it happen.
How are they going to get a franchise or an ownership group to pay, though? Because they've been charging an insane amount of money for relocation and what's it called, expansion fees. Was there a relocation fee as well for Winnipeg?
I don't know. But you move them to a location where it can't fail, and that's where it gets tricky, because I think the no-brainer if you want to make money is Quebec City. But Arizona, being a Western team, doesn't apply well there. I think Columbus would go down kicking and screaming if they try to boot him to the West. Houston geographically makes the most sense, but I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say another team in Texas is going to be a surefire hit. So depending on the fees, you never know. But yeah, I mean, Houston can't be worse than Arizona.
Russell 18 says, so the lack of moves to this point seems to indicate Yzerman is waiting for teams to be a little bit more desperate before he pulls the trigger. What do you think needs to happen to kickstart his offseason moves?
A team gets desperate for something else that doesn't relate to the Red Wings. So there's been rumors linking Vegas to Alex Pietrangelo, hypothetically. They do not have the cap space for Alex Pietrangelo. They need to make a quick move to get Alex Pietrangelo before he signs somewhere else. So they go, shit, 2nd round pick and take Fleury, please. And that's what will kickstart it.
And just to add on to that, the NHL draft is a great catalyst for that kind of thing.
Yeah, teams fall in love with players on their draft board. And when they fall, silly things start to happen. Like, look at the ransom Arizona gave Detroit just to get Jacob Chychrun, and they took on an awful contract, well, a dead contract to do it. So draft is silly season. This year might be different though, because you won't have the face-to-face interactions. That's the big, I don't even know what to call it, crux of it going the other way to prevent the chaos, is because you won't have these meetings face-to-face every 10 minutes during the draft. Like, this is still going to have to be picking up the phone and making things happen, which happens all the time. The draft changes nothing that other than, well, the draft boards are up, so teams have players. So I don't know. It's going to be weird.
Okay, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We will be back with you guys on Wednesday night, but for now, we want to thank all of you guys for listening, all of our patrons for supporting the show, our name level sponsors. That is Arjun Shanker, Terry, Greach, Jeremiah Dobo, Jake Kiefer, Ben Shapiro reading WAP for an hour, Andrew Bohan, Scott Martin, Jacob Turner, Matt McKay, Craig Kibble, Brandon M., Matthew M. Rice, Luke Johnson, Kaylin Wood, Hassam Al-Qassem, Charlie Elkins, Hana Lee, Obeer1 Kenobi, Trevor Pevavar, Alex Ott, Ashley Van Conant, Chris Frank, Connor Leightonen, Matthew Keeler, Simon Anderson, Antonio Gracias, John Evans, Quaz, Stan Olson. Thank you all so much. I have to go buy a billboard related to Matt Patricia's employment. See you Wednesday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.